and welcome to The Shift, the podcast that aims to tell the no-holds-barred truth about being a woman post-40. Created and hosted by me, writer and broadcaster, Sam Baker. Before I knew today's guest, Stacey Duguid, I thought she was a bit scary, fierce in all the ways. And then I got to know her when I was still editor of Red magazine and she was working on Elle. And I discovered that she wasn't. Because Stacey, like so many of us, is just exceptionally good at putting on a front. And that front served her really well. Until it didn't. She was 45 when everything collapsed. Or more accurately, she put a grenade under it. The thing she'd been trained to want ever since she was tiny. The house, the husband, the children, the career, the happy ever after, all blown to smithereens. Now 49, a single mum and a successful journalist. You might have seen her dating columns in The Telegraph. She is very much back from the brink and has written In Pursuit of Happiness. It's the most brilliant book about midlife collapse and ultimately recovery. And I just know, I'm 100,000,000% certain, just trust me, you are going to love it.
I'm no longer lonely in my own skin. And that is fucking huge.
As candid in person as she is in print, Stacey talks frankly about the pain of divorce, searching for a self that you've never met, self-blame, hotness syndrome. You'll find out what that is in a minute. Perimenopause mayhem, and I mean mayhem, all caps. Making peace with her mother, learning to take a breath, rediscovering her creativity, midlife sexuality, and, drumroll, toyboywarehouse.com. You really go there, don't you? Really go there. Is that something you needed to do?
I just sort of wrote it as it flowed. There was so much of it I didn't use because, I think I wrote probably 800 pages. There was so much processing going on.
Yeah.
I know, can you imagine? Poor editors.
Nah, that's what they're paid for.
There was so much, everyone says, oh, was it cathartic? Or, no, it wasn't. Were you processing? No, I wasn't. I was processing, yes, but I had a lot of therapy, during which time, 5 years, I assumed that I had got over the worst. Clearly there was something still locked away. And a lot of that is not in the book. So in lots of ways, I really do go there. But in lots of ways, I also keep a huge part of me back. If that makes sense. So I go there as far as I could physically go, emotionally go rather, but then I've kept a whole chunk back. So I do feel quite vulnerable this week after a lot of the press came out, but I don't feel as vulnerable as, the whole story, obviously. We've all got the story behind the story, haven't we?
Yeah, totally. And then there's the stuff you can't say. And I was thinking that when I was reading it, it was really hard not to, knowing you a bit, not knowing you intimately in the way that your girlfriends do, but knowing you a bit was really hard to read without kind of thinking, there's something else there and there's something else going on there. But it's one thing living it, and then there's another world of pain writing it all down. But then, you're at the point now of seeing it all over the internet and the papers. How's that?
Just quickly back to, well, first of all, I was relieved to see you even liked it. Thank God. Seeing it all over the internet and seeing it all out there, I do feel quite naked. Yeah, I feel like someone's sort of stripped me bare and I'm walking through Oxford. I'm walking down Regent Street.
Yeah, never Oxford Street, darling.
Never Oxford Street. It's a real dump. It's just full of sweet shops now.
It's like, though, I think the thing is, if you've got like a public-ish job, like you work in a magazine, you think you're used to people critiquing everything you do anyway. And then especially when you've got social media, you think, people can get hold of you and they can tell you they think your hair's shit, or that's probably just me, or that they think you've done a crap job or they hate that issue. But when you nothing prepares you for putting a book out.
No.
Especially something this personal.
Yeah. No, nothing can prepare you for that. I was relieved to finish it because it's like the biggest deadline of your life. You just have to get it done. And then there's a part of you that just thinks, okay, it'll all be fine once this bit's over. And then actually what I hadn't really considered was the bit after. So, actually this bit when it comes out. Yeah, I'm used to people critiquing, and saying stupid things about my hair or whatever. We're just, whatever. Have I had plastic surgery, or, do I use Botox? Like, that's just what happens across social media and all over, like you and I both worked on women's magazines. We know what it's like. This piece of work, I put my whole soul into it. I put my entire being into it. So it's not just the story itself. It's like all of the effort that I put into it, that 7 months of real, just, it takes stamina to write like, a book in 7 months. It takes a lot of discipline. What I'm trying to do is sort of step back and look at it now and go, this is now a product and I've made it. And just like I would have done at Elle magazine, or when I've, worked for brands, I've now got to promote this product. And I've had to sort of almost like sever the umbilical cord from it. But no, nothing prepares you for something that, as personal as a memoir coming out, and the kind of reaction to it. Of course, you can't control that. This week I have felt quite low. And actually, my friend Kate Spicer called me last night. She said, "You okay?" And I said, "No, I feel a bit down. I feel vulnerable. I feel down. I feel actually a bit mad." I mean, I hadn't had a shower. I've been working on masses of deadlines. I've been up since, 4 hours already this morning writing.
Who are you, Stacey Duguid?
I don't know who I am anymore. Actually, I haven't. I've just come out of Vauxhall. I just came out of a nightclub.
Yeah.
Imagine. Yeah, it's that sort of preparation. How can anyone tell you? Or you can't prepare for that kind of fallout. And no, of course, I don't read comments on things. Obviously, my own Instagram, yes, but not on newspaper articles.
Oh, God, no, don't go below the line. But I don't really want to dwell on all the bad stuff, partly because that's what everybody else has dwelt on, because it's you. But I think, because for the listeners, I think what's going to really interest them is that, well, you and I have talked about this before, that it's like so many women get to this stage of their life, and I'm like 7 or 8 years older than you, but they're their mid-40s, I think they're mid-40s through maybe their 50s, where they just go, what the fuck? And they either put a bomb under a bit of it, they put a bomb under all of it, or they want to put a bomb under it, but can't for various reasons, like whatever their reasons are. And I certainly think all the therapy you've had, which I'll ask you about in a minute, will have played a big part in that. So I want to talk about the kind of the recovery and where you are now a lot, because I think that will really interest people. But before we do, we have to just touch on the bad stuff, because people need to understand. People who haven't read the book need to understand kind of why you put the bomb under your life. Well, you say you put your grenade under your life, but I wonder whether you did, because one of the things I noticed in the book is that you blame yourself for absolutely everything. And now I don't know, well, I know you, so I know that's a thing, but I don't know whether that's like a legal thing. The publishers basically said you have to take all the blame. Or I'm interested that you do that, because the way I read it is, yes, you had a very brief affair with someone that you fancied at school, coincidentally. This is a very long question, but it is going somewhere. But then your ex woke you up in the middle of the night and said, I found the texts, I've sent them to my lawyer, we're getting divorced. So who put the bomb under it?
Yeah, I know. And actually, no. So first of all, the publishers did not tell me to take all the blame. That's just my default setting. Take the blame, take the blame. It's your fault. It's your fault. Which has been taken a lot of untangling in therapy. Which, hopefully, when the listeners read the book, they'll understand comes from a place of not imperfect, not terrible childhood, but, a kind of difficult start. So, there's a lot of science around the first 3 years of a child's life is the most important in terms of developmental. And
what can you pin it on, though?
I can pin it on that, actually. Are we talking about the bomb? Or are we talking about... So I'm going to get into the bomb because I think that's a really interesting question. Who done it, sort of thing.
Yeah, but the blame, your tendency to take the blame, that comes from when you were little, doesn't it?
It comes from when I was little. It comes from being in an environment between the age of, 0 and 3 that was quite volatile. And so as a kind of way of protecting myself, all children, lots and lots of children, tend to internalize their parents' divorce or their parents arguing as their fault. It's my fault they don't love each other. And that's it's quite a common thing. Children around the age of 6 or 7 think that they can fix their parents' marriage in a kind of superhero way. I remember my daughter saying it to me, and it actually reminded me of how I used to feel. She said, "Is this my fault?" And I said, "No, it's not your fault. And you're a little girl and you have a lot of power, but you don't have that much power. You don't have the power to control your parents' divorce." Okay.
That's the thing, isn't it? Because if it's your fault, you can fix it.
Yeah, if it's your fault, you can do something about it, which is, quite clever. It's a way of protecting yourself. So it spent my life feeling like it's my fault. Now, with regards to the bomb, I feel like I describe it as a kind of explosion because of the way that because of the way I dealt with the situation. I felt like it was as though I made a bad situation. I can hear my therapist on my shoulder.
I know, I can hear her too.
It was a bad situation that triggered something within me from my childhood. Remember, we're talking 2018 and I hadn't had therapy. It triggered something, my abandonment. It triggered all sorts of stuff. And all of that exploded within me. And that is the bomb that went off, the bomb within me. The affair, it was a fling. It was a one-night thing with a school friend, old school friend. That ends, the bit in the book, we're in the hotel room together, is just horrible. And it was a horrible experience. I've never spoken about it before. That bit does actually feel quite cathartic to speak about because I did feel ridiculous. I felt, oh my God. And it all goes terribly wrong after some class A drugs are consumed and he calls a sex worker. Anyway, you have to read the rest. But the bomb that was detonated, I felt as if I had exploded internally because I couldn't cope with the situation around me. I wanted to run, but I couldn't. I had 2 children. I had no money either. I wanted to run. I had no money to sort of set up a new home and start again. But I also didn't know how. I couldn't even fathom what that would mean.
But also it was more than setting up a new home. There's a bit in the book because for listeners, Stacey married a long time after so you've been with your partner about 8 years when you got married, is that right?
Yeah.
8 years. So there's a bit of the book when you just kind of say you're walking down the aisle like walking the plank. And it's like, oh, stab. So it had all gone it was tits up, your therapist would say. It was already
shaky.
There's a lot going on before the bomb goes off.
I remember during that period, I don't know if it's possible to have had a nervous breakdown for a sum total of 6 years, but it is it? I do
I'm
feel
sure
like
it is.
I look back and I think I describe it as being on autopilot in the book prior to my therapy, but I just remember we changed the date so many times. Neither of us really believed in marriage. His mum, second marriage, his dad, third marriage. My mum is on her third. Like, what's the point? So much admin, and I can't even pay a council tax bill on time. Like, there we were, kind of performers, actors in our own lives, not communicating and not talking and not doing anything, but sort of existing side by side. And you're right, he was my safe harbor, my ocean liner. But yeah, he was more than a life raft. But quite cleverly, a friend of mine pointed out the other day, which I hadn't thought about really. She said he could have been anyone. So it wasn't about him per se. It was what I needed to hold on to, even in the relationship for those first years together. I mean, I was very happy in the first year we're together, but even right in the beginning of our relationship, I was still lonely inside my own skin. And I had assumed that loneliness would go, but it never went. And it was as if I could never escape myself. I'd make decisions based upon, it's almost like I was a child. I was like in a childlike state. I was in kind of some sort of arrested development. And there is a word for it. And I cannot remember it for the life of me, but my therapist has essentially, over 5 years, played the role of my mother. And I've had to go from this child state and develop into adulthood. And I swear that really I dealt with things in quite a childlike way before therapy, whether it was a kind of, I don't know if you did you read because it's in sort of essays. So it's, it's like,
I read all of them, babe.
But did you read the one about where I had the meltdown about someone asking me to file copy by 3:00? And I was like,
yeah. You perceive that as rejection in a weird way.
Rejection. How odd to find myself working in fashion with, one of the most brutal industries.
Oh, God, it's all about rejection.
Yeah.
Just never good enough, never thin enough.
Never, ever.
Never posh enough. No. Never whatever enough.
No, exactly. In terms of walking the plank that day, as I described the aisle, it really felt as though it was like a wake-up moment. Is it? Is this actually happening? Am I doing this? Of course I was. And then it went to shit on the honeymoon. The whole thing collapsed in front of my eyes. Us, everything. And we should never have got married, and we should have been in couples therapy from 3 years before we decided to get married. But I needed and I wanted the security. And I loved him, but I was lonely in the relationship. It's really hard to describe, isn't it? Because I loved him like, I can't even say, like, not like a friend, not like a family member, like he was this essential part of myself that I couldn't leave. It was like this, because I've done so much work on myself, I would never enter into a relationship like that ever again. He represented something that was lacking in myself, but actually, of course, he could never, ever provide that. So we were always doomed. It would all, unless I had gone into intense therapy and then we would have had couples therapy, it was always going to be a bomb at some point.
It's like, and this is the product of two people who've had therapy talking, but it's like you can't make your home in someone else.
No.
And when you've had either, a difficult childhood or a difficult relationship in your teens or whatever, it's tempting to, kind of constantly do that. Well, you put in the book, you put it down to two things that I want to talk about both, and I can't work out how to get them both in. That kind of Disneyfication of life that little girls in particular, I think, are still subject to, but certainly were subject to in the 70s and 80s. But also your dad's.
I start the book with this, this kind of narrative that I internalized, and many women do, and still do, by the way, because I have asked 18-year-olds. This idea that the prince will come. We all know the tropes, right? You'll marry your prince, and you'll live happily ever after with, however many children and an array of small tweeting animals following your, I don't know, what would I be wearing? Phoebe Philo's new collection, a long gown designed by Phoebe Philo. She brings out her
of course you would,
collection.
yeah.
I mean, anyway, but I also think that those books and that narrative was an escape route for me from working class Manchester. I was born in a place called Ashton-under-Lyne, which is just outside of Manchester, which is where there is a lot that's high unemployment. You know, it was really affected by things such as the coal miners' strike and the coal mines being closed down. You know, 1,000 mines a week closed down by our friend Thatcher, although apparently Labour started it before her. And obviously the Industrial Revolution brought so much cash into the area. Now nothing's made up there. So you're talking about 4th generation, 5th generation on benefits. It's a rough part of the world. And actually, I met someone recently and they said, where were you born? I said, Ashton. And they went, in Ashton Hospital, and you're still alive.
Yeah.
That's not funny, but I was like, yes. And, you know, my mum and my grandmother and my great-grandmother all worked in the same cigarette factory. It was called Patrios. Patrios, I don't like that, Patrios. And Patrios employed everybody in the area, this cigarette factory. You know, money was tight. And these stories, these fairy tales, these fantasies, why not slip into them? Why not head that way? And I think it's one of the reasons I loved clothes and fashion, because it provides the instant fantasy, doesn't it? You know, it's a well-used metaphor, but you can put on a dress and you can be anybody. So this Disneyfication, yeah, sure, we all inhale it, to use your word, in our childhood for various reasons. Some people don't. I mean, there were no books in my house. There was one book. It was a book on deep sea fish, which I was obsessed by. And that was kind of it. My parents didn't read. They didn't go to university. Working class, you know. And I know people describe themselves as working class when they themselves are second generation because their parents went to university. But, you know, when your parents don't go to university and there's no map, there's no model to follow because they've just, you know, been working their arses off. My mum worked in a till in a supermarket at night, which is where she met my stepfather. So yeah, the Disneyfication of, you know, childhood stories, it became my kind of, oh yeah, it's fine because I will meet a man and he will be my savior. And you collide that with a father who wasn't there. And then really, you know, I internalized a lot about money with that relationship because he allegedly didn't pay child support. I mean, we left with, I was 3 and we had 2 carrier bags, one for her and one for me. And we went to live with my grandparents, got on the bus. And she allegedly had a black eye and off we went. I was delusional because it was easier to be delusional than face into the reality of actually your dad is a bit crap. He's never going to be your real, you know, he's not going to really step up as a dad. You can go to the shows and wear all the pretty dresses you like, but Prince Charming still won't come on as, you know, pop to Milan Fashion Week on a stallion. And I always had this fantasy, Sam, that I would be sitting in a cafe in Italy and this like sort of good looking suave guy would sort of come into the cafe. He'd be sipping espresso. I mean, we didn't even have time to have an espresso, did we?
No, I was going to say, when did you get this time to go into and sit in a cafe? Can you pinpoint the point you stopped thinking Prince Charming was going to come?
Yeah, 2 years ago in therapy, because I was still
isn't it?
Looking for him.
Yeah, there's this line where you say, and I think it was going to resonate with so many people, and totally resonated with me. Like, by the time I was 8, I subconsciously knew I had to be beautiful, slim, passive, and most importantly, quiet. Oh, and young forever. It's like, how are you doing with young forever?
Do you know what is so liberating about having gone through such a crap 5 years and, you know, survived to literally tell the tale, is that I am okay with that stuff now. I was, so working on Elle, I started having, you get free stuff. Yeah, you get free stuff. You don't get paid particularly well, but you get free shit. And a lot of that free shit would be, you know, a bit of Botox here and a bit of this there, whatever.
So how old were you when you started that?
Huh?
How old were you when you 30?
I was 30. You just don't need it at 30. How bonkers.
No, what do they call it? Is it preemptive?
Yeah.
I remember. It's like, what?
My last sort of foray into Botox, when I realised I actually couldn't express myself fully in any way unless I start, like, you know, miming, using my arms and kind of like, I don't know, like, or doing it like silent movie like Charlie Chaplin, just running around. Like, it's ridiculous. You can't move your face and you just feel like you're I felt like I was half a person. But also, by the way, there was nothing. Just, I'm not saying that it's a bad thing. I'm saying that it's a choice thing, of course. I may well have a little squish in the center of my eyebrows at some point again, but I'm talking about too much for me. And a squish here and there, fine. But this was like, so the last time I did that, it was so fun. I was thinking about this just yesterday. This doctor, it was another free shit moment, was recording it. And I think I was a demo model or something, which is why I had way too much in my face. And he turned to them, his little audience, and said, and I was 39, by the way, of 40. He said, well, this is a classic example of hotness syndrome. She was once hot, but she now is not.
Fuck off.
And I lay there and I took that. Hot, what, like, fuck off. And I look at my face now, 10 years later, and I am so happy because it's not just about my face. I've rediscovered hobbies that I hadn't, I paint again. I paint far too long into the night. I'm about to start a master's at St. Martin's. I didn't finish my art school education because of, I basically went off the rails for my whole of my 20s as a reaction to not dealing with the stuff in childhood, probably, but all sorts of things, discovering, ecstasy and raves and all of that. So it was quite a difficult period, actually. Who ever thought that sending me off to university, well, it was a poly at that time, in 1992, was a good idea? I'd already spent my student loan on the Vivienne Westwood catsuit. Like, for God's sake, really? I did art school for 1 year, and actually, I don't have many regrets in my life, but that is one, is dropping out of art school and finding myself absolutely, just sort of free falling. And I started a nightclub in Edinburgh. But anyway, back to the aging thing, getting older, however we're calling it, growing older, whatever. I'm so much happier because there's so much more than, I think we fall into the trap, don't we? That we are valued by the external, and my internal world, my inner world is so rich now. I'm no longer lonely in my own skin. And that is fucking huge.
You're very good at hiding the serious stuff in the gags. It's when you're talking to the therapist and you talk about where you basically say, I'm older and I'm single. And whenever I try to imagine myself even older than I am today, all I see is this lonely figure seated at a small kitchen table. It's like...
Yeah, that was actually... Oh, God, I've forgotten about that bit.
Sorry.
Selective memory, eh?
Yeah, best thing.
Remember the funnies? That was actually a really horrible look, there've been many horrible sessions, but that particular session was, I was in the middle of trying to buy this house, which took a long time. The woman I bought the house off, she was also single, and I think she's possibly not more than 10 years older than me. She lived here alone. It had been her marital home, brought up 2 boys here. I remember her coming to the door one day and she was in a dressing gown and she'd had her tooth operated on, and I just needed to, because the whole thing took a year, because she waited for me, because I was the only person who came through the door and didn't say, I'm going to rip it all out and then put this sort of glass box like everyone has done around in Kensal Rise. Like, I didn't have the money to do that, but also like, I don't care for that particular Pinterest board. But I came around one day to measure something, and she came to the front door wearing this dressing gown. She'd just had an operation on her tooth. And I ended up hugging her because she looked like she was in so much pain. She'd been, if you've ever had a sore tooth, like horrendous pain. And she'd been up all night, and I could see that she needed to be looked after, but there was nobody there to look after her. There was nobody beside her in bed to just, roll over to or outstretch your arm. Or in that moment, I felt that we were both as alone as one another. And then I just carried that with me for quite a long time. And then I imagine myself to be her in 10 years' time, having had, insert name of operation and being in agony and having no one here to help me out. And it's a scary, scary thought, but it could happen. Now I've worked through, I'm lucky enough to have found a therapist that has been able to work with me this long without abandoning me. No, without me quitting, actually. Because my God, it's hard to turn up to her door every week. But being able to work through those feelings of, but it's okay if you're on your own at a kitchen table. That's not such a bad thing. And actually, I'm now able to be on my own at my not small kitchen table because I have 2 kids. And I really enjoy it. And I sit at my kitchen table and I paint and I write. So I could be that woman that I envisage, but I actually don't feel lonely. And I think coming into the house and meeting her, the previous owner, and having that moment with her where I hugged her, just made me think, gosh, life just doesn't turn out as we think sometimes. We think it, or we'll hope it might. And maybe you're on your own one day in a dressing gown in a lot of pain and no one's there to help you. But that's life.
And maybe that's better than someone being there that you'd rather not. Do you feel like that now?
Oh, Sam, honestly, if I could have gone back, I would have 1,000,000 times. And it's only in the last year that I felt strong enough within to say, actually, there was a reason you left. There was a reason you couldn't see yourself and yourselves growing old together. There was a reason for all of it. And I have actually stopped the self-blame, because that's the other thing about having the same therapist for 5 years, is that I've got someone who can check my self-blame. Oh, but when you said 4 years ago, X, Y, Z, I remember describing to her, we'd go for dinner and we'd sit in silence. I mean, I've never wanted to be in a couple where we sit at dinner in complete silence. It is, and you see people like that in restaurants, don't you? You're like,
all the time. Yeah.
That's the thing, the decision making around divorce is actually really hard because there's so much to weigh up. There's your future self, there's the future self you thought you would be, there's the family, there's all of the kind of, the childhood, Disney narrative, oh, it'll be perfect. And then you feel like a failure because this is the bit that you're supposed to be really good at. Oh, why can't I stick it out? Or you just can't afford to leave. There's so many things. Mm-hmm. And when you make the decision that actually I'm going to leave, things that you haven't thought of, such as the lonely woman sitting at the kitchen table, when they come into your mind, because obviously I'd left at that point. I think I was living in my 3rd rented accommodation. We moved so much, it was horrible. When that came into my mind, it was as if like there was another, huge wave in the sea and I was drowning again. Because of course, now I can rationally say, I would rather be that woman at my kitchen table, age 70, alone, than have spent the last 25 years in an unhappy marriage where I feel even more alone. But in that moment, when I had that vision and that realization, it was devastating because there are so many things that just keep the emotions kept rolling. Just as, you pick yourself up. Okay, I'm fine. Boom. It's like being knocked out by a heavyweight champion. They come at you again in the ring and you're down. You're like, I can't get up again. I can't get up again. And it's just an never ending sort of tsunami of grief.
Mm.
It's fucking terrible.
What do you think, what part, if any, do you think perimenopause played in all of this upheaval? Yeah, sorry.
Quite a lot. Now, I'm not a doctor, thank God. I have no scientific backing, so forgive me for just waffling here a bit because none of this is proven. I think there is we know there is a huge change in our hormones as we reach perimenopause, as we enter perimenopause. And I think in my I can only talk from my personal experience, I felt that there was one last hurrah. And that last hurrah, which is a kind of sort of a diminishing way to describe it, because it's actually, it's way more, it's sort of way more almost like life-threatening than that. It's like, okay, my ovaries are popping out huge eggs, and I can just feel my boom, boom, come on, one more baby, let's go. And with that, I had a heightened libido. The perimenopause also made me consider next chapter and what does that look like? And when you're in perimenopause, unless you've had an early menopause, you tend to be around 45. And at that age, you've got a lot of life to live, but you're over halfway. And if you're going to live to 90, of course, but most of us are over. Yeah. That is a real existential reckoning. And you're like, all right, so let's break this down. What does it look like? And I had kids, not late, I suppose, compared to what, it's pretty much the norm now. But at 40, I had a 1-year-old and a 3-year-old. So, do the maths on that. They're at school. I don't have to put their pants on them anymore. I don't have to wipe their bottoms, and I don't have to clean their teeth. And so there's a lot of freedom that comes with that. And I get a lot of time back. So you've got a collision of hormones, the eggs popping, the body going one last hurrah, an increased libido, children who are slowly growing up. Yeah, it had a lot to do with, do I stay or do I go? And if I stay, do I go when their kids are 18? Or do I stay for the long run and this is just it? Or do I go and go now? And when I say last hurrah, that last hurrah felt to me like the most important thing on the planet. It was all consuming. And it was as if my entire being, it was visceral. Well,
it's the rest of your life, isn't it?
Yeah. Non-scientifically speaking, without any data to prove it, I've spoken to quite a lot of women. Well, rather, they've spoken to me because I get a lot of messages on my Instagram. Direct messages.
You'll get even more when the book comes out.
And they talk to me about their split, their divorce, their separation. And they talk to me about their very funny sexual adventures 6 months post-separation, which have howl, which is all I'm convinced to do with this last hurrah, this, go for it. And there's if you do go for it and you're 45 and you suddenly find yourself going from a kind of floral midi dress to a micro mini skirt, sorry, cliche, but that's what happened to me. Bonkers. I never saw that coming. What on earth? But the story yesterday someone told me was she'd ended up in a foursome. She just left her husband, ended up in a foursome. The foursome, they all sort of did what they had to do. Can't imagine that, quite frankly. But anyway, they did that. And then the other couple, she wasn't with a couple. There was a random guy, her and a couple. She ended up giving marriage counseling to the couple. She just couldn't make it up.
It's like your book is full of horror stories about midlife dating and dating apps and sleazy men, and about the good stuff, because you have had a midlife sexual awakening, haven't you? And that's, frankly, that's what everyone wants to hear. Everyone wants to hear that it's going to come good. Literally, sorry, that was totally unintentional.
Happy ending. Again, sorry to be a bore. Thanks to therapy, I have this idea, before therapy, I didn't know who I was. Post therapy, I do. But if you don't know who you are, how can you know what you want?
Yeah.
So now I know who I am. I know what I want. I mean, I'd often just find myself lying there like a sex doll with rigor mortis, or playing the part of an actress, almost like an acrobat. These are the tricks I'm supposed to do, right? But not really feeling it. I'm talking about sexual encounters in my 20s and 30s, which were performative. The stuff that I thought I was meant to be doing, I didn't enjoy it. I certainly didn't orgasm. But when, recently, as I've got to know myself, I know what it is that turns me on, and I know what it is I like. Couple that with HRT, which for some women can increase their libido, and it has with me. It's just made me feel better. It's made me feel better in terms of I'm calmer. Gosh, too much information. Just
no such thing.
Is it not? Okay.
No.
Juicier down there.
Oh my God, that's not fair.
I am. And it's HRT. And
I need to know more about this particular HRT you're on.
Estrogel. And that's why I call it an awakening, because having experienced it, I'm like, okay, that's what it should have been. I get it now. I'd actually, probably the completely wrong time to bring up my mother, but I'm going to. Segues from juicy vagina into her mother. She and I also have a better relationship.
Yeah.
Because of my therapy, but also, happiness within and contentment within and a bit of HRT and whatever it is, whatever the blend. So 2 weeks before, I had been to see my mom, and it was always really difficult between us. I felt really uncomfortable around her. She felt uncomfortable around me. We loved each other, but we tried really hard to love one another, but there was an intolerance and a lot of unspoken shit that is in the book. And I, left home at 17 and all sorts of stuff. So it was all of this unspoken mess. And then she said something about a friend's daughter, who at the time was 15, and I exploded. And my mum's husband looked at me and looked at her. And I said, you know what, leave the kitchen and close the door. And I thought, it's now or never. I clear the air, and we went at it. Good God. 4 hours, there was awful language used. There was a lot of tears, so much honesty and truth. The following morning, when we said goodnight, we sort of just, good night. I woke up, I opened my eyes, I was horrifically hungover. The kids were really little, and I thought, either we are going to fix this from this point onwards, or it's done, and I'll never see her again. And I posed this question to her the next morning, and she said, no, we'll fix this. Now, because of, going through a lot of my childhood stuff with my therapist, I've learned a lot of forgiveness. And also, I understand her. She was broke. I forgive her. And it's such a relief.
It's like there's just like a one tiny comment in the book, partly because of, knowing you before when you and your mum didn't get on. It's, and you talk about her 3 marriages, and and then you just go, it was survival.
Yeah. And
I just thought, wow, because, for so many women still now, but certainly back then, marriage was how women survived. They kind of had to. And, I think your mum, after the first one, did a lot, better. The second 2 times. But it's like, I just thought that showed, I don't know, forgiveness, understanding.
We don't think about that, do we? But I've just finished Maggie O'Farrell's The Marriage Portrait.
It's brilliant, isn't it?
Oh, my God. What a masterpiece. Women had to get married. We were, especially women of a certain standing, royalty, were equity. It was a way out. It was a job, and it was survival. It was literal survival. So many unmarried women in history ended up being burned at the stake, didn't they?
Yeah, there is. You've thrown your mum in the middle of my nicely planned, segue. So there is no way, no clever, funny way for me to segue from your mum to toyboywarehouse.com. So tell me. Sorry, you're choking.
Mouthful of coffee, thank you.
It's got to be really cold.
There is actually. I can bring my mum into this conversation because I was telling my mum about it with my auntie Tina. She's not my real auntie, but she was my dinner lady. She was the dinner lady at school. Her and my mum are really good mates. And she was like, toyboywarehouse.com. And my mum rang. She said, your auntie Tina wants that website address. I was like, she'll do so well on it. Do you know what? Toy Boy Warehouse, what a name. It makes me giggle. It's like pets.
I just assumed you'd made it up. Yeah.
wow, an actual sight. And it's a bit tragic, actually, because, I was only on there for like 48 hours, but, cubs looking for cougars, I'll lick your pussy all day if you pay my rent. I'm like, oh God.
Oh, no.
Oh God. Sugar mummy. Awful. Anyway, sorry for that visual. But I went on as a bit of a joke, and there we are. Sexual awakening. I met a really lovely man who only dates older women.
He's not that much younger than you, is he?
He's 13 years younger. He's 36 now.
Yeah, that's not that much younger. It's more the same age. Well, it's more or less the same age difference that I have with John, and nobody bats an eyelid.
But the other way round, it's sort of...
Yeah. So you were obviously actively looking for a younger bloke.
No, I was actively looking for no strings attached sex. Like, the gay equivalent, I have been told, is a website called Grindr, which is a hookup site for gay men. There is sort of nothing similar for heterosexuals, but there are a couple of sites, but it's all so obvious. It's very, it's just kind of dirty. Maybe it just kind of feels horrible. Like, it's too obvious. So I tried this website out, and I met someone really nice. And I do know a couple of people who have got married from this website. And it's not all sleaze, but you have to really pick through it. But I didn't have to. I met him within 24 or 48 hours, and then I was off the site because I couldn't bear it. I had like 500 messages. I get no messages on Hinge. No one wants to be on Hinge.
I think it's really interesting that you've met this younger guy and you're really happy, and you're really happy in yourself, and you're really, and you've had your sexual awakening, as we're calling it, because so many women I talk to, not all, but very many, who have broken up with their long-term partners and are single at this point or back out there, they all say, firstly, that the best sex they've had has been with younger men, but also that they feel so much more comfortable with younger men.
Yes. Okay, so we can talk about the perimenopause and this hormonal change, but I don't know much about what happens to men in midlife. I mean, I've heard that testosterone drops. Don't know, not a doctor. I haven't read about it. I shall go and read about it. The men that I've met seem to either be complete and utter narcissists or lacked confidence in themselves. Like divorce had really battered the wind out of them. And divorce does. But you get back up and you put on your show face, right? And you go on a date. It's like, okay. But a lot of them, I don't like to generalize. I really don't. And I'm not talking about all middle-aged men at all. But the men that I met, some of them, quite a lot of them, seemed deflated and just a bit done in by life. And younger men usually come without that complexity. And I wonder if it's a generational thing as well. Like, I wonder if it's a Gen X thing, maybe this new millennial. I mean, they don't want kids either, these younger people. A lot of young people don't want kids. My lover doesn't want children. And a lot of his friends aren't having kids. So actually it's which sounds a bit Peter Pan, and it's not. They're mature, they've got their careers, but it is slightly alternative, right? It's sort of, they can be nomadic, they can live in wherever. And we're talking about, people who do certain jobs, of course, not doctors. But he happens to be in fashion. He's a stylist, and lots of their friends are, they live all over the world. They live, some live in Brittany, some live in Paris, some live in Greece, and they're just a very interesting bunch of people. And I really have enjoyed meeting them. I've met people that don't live the kind of life that I have grown up believing was the life we should have. And actually, it's opened my mind to my future, my life. Like, oh, I'm learning Spanish. I might end up living in Spain. In fact, I probably will end up living in Spain, where, by the way, honestly breaks my heart. The way they care for their elders, their older people, is unbelievably tender. And it's a very different culture from here. But meeting someone from France and meeting his friends, it's much more kind of international set of people. Has been really joyful, actually, at this age.
And you no longer feel too much or not enough?
Oh, Sam. don't make me cry.
Oh, I didn't mean to make you cry.
Yes, I will always feel like that.
Oh, no.
Always.
Oh, but that's sad because, I mean, objectively, from outside, you've always been, I mean, too much is leveled at so many women.
Yes,
feeling not enough.
Yeah.
Often, but you've always been more than enough. And I would, at this point, with everything you've achieved, you really are.
I think that it will take many more generations to break the idea of women being too much. It's been a very difficult week being in the press. The Times serialization was a real focus on, sex and middle age and all the rest of it. When the book is about, listen, I'm not saying that was an opening piece, and now I really want to talk about the rest of the book in the press and the interviews that I give. And I've just given an interview this morning about women and money. Being too much really strikes through my heart, because I always check myself. Am I too much? Am I being too much? I walk in a room. Am I being too much? Am I about to be too much? I don't know whether that's being a neurodivergent woman, because my daughter, I see that she has a bit of this going on too. In fact, I only noticed my own too muchness when I go into a room of people that I know kind of well, but not I was invited to an old neighbour's party and I didn't really know anyone. I'd met them a couple of times. And I watched my little girl, who's now 10, she was 9 at the time. She walked towards the door and she said, she went like this. I'm now putting my hands over my face. She went, "Don't be weird."
Oh.
I was standing behind her and I thought, oh my God, that's me. Don't be weird. Don't be too much. Don't say outrageous things. But I've always been like that. And I always, not with the intention of upsetting people, but I have always been just a bit too much. But by whose standard? By what?
Yeah, who says? Maybe they're not enough,
Women are always too much. Or women who speak out or dare to go back to the workplace in their 50s, or, the kind of, or Madonna, too much. Why do we grow up feeling like if we have a voice or we want to use our voice that we're too much? What the fuck? And it really hurts, because I check myself every day. Am I being too much? And I think it's a shame, because I think a lot of little girls are, as we speak, internalizing the same thing.
So much has changed and so much hasn't. That is how I always feel, because I've always felt like I looked weird, and I've never been, as you know, very good at fitting in and making friends. And so, yeah, that don't be weird. I really identify with that. But I know so many people with jobs vaguely in the public eye, whether it's promoting a book or whatever, who put themselves on before they leave the house. And I do that. I kind of become a different person to go to work. And it's interesting interviewing actually for the podcast somebody I properly know, because I'm wondering whether I'm going to be sound different.
Because you haven't put on your show face.
Yes. Yeah, because I haven't gone, don't be weird before I turned the mic on.
Because we're two weirdos together.
Yes. And you're always in a safe, weird space.
Yeah.
I rarely do this, but I'm going to give the book a massive plug, because we haven't talked about all Stacey's embarrassing sexual encounters, which are well worth reading. We haven't talked about your ADHD diagnosis in your late 40s, which I think is so massive and so integral to your experience. But also, I think there are so many women who just weren't diagnosed because it was a naughty little boy thing. We haven't talked about money, which is massive. And I desperately want to, in fact, I'm going to, even though we're well out of time. How did you end up only owning 4.6% of your house? How did that happen?
Because of my lack of self-worth. I didn't believe that little girl from Ashton-under-Lyne believed that she shouldn't be in that house. And actually, I realized that actually, if we had been equal partners, we'd have been in a small flat, and that would have been okay because we'd have been equal partners.
Yeah.
But we weren't equal partners because how could I possibly match with my job and everything? I've never earned loads of money. It's not be my,
no,
it's not.
That's fashion for you.
No. So that's, it was like a sense of shame, a sense of guilt, a sense of embarrassment, lack of communication, an inability to communicate for the fear of rejection. Because if I told him, no, I should be 50-50, this should be 50-50. We had one child at that point. I had very bad postnatal depression, which is in the book, in the section called, which was in motherhood, but the chapter is called Hide the Knives, and it's quite brutal. And I was very sick. And so I went through all of that during that period. And so, yeah, I owned 4.6% of the house.
Yes, just like, I mean,
that would never happen to me again.
It's a whole other conversation. Maybe one we should have. Maybe we should do. Maybe we'll do a money special. But, yeah, I was so gobsmacked when I read that. So gobsmacked, and I think more women than would admit it find themselves in similar, maybe not quite so radical, but similar situations. So
many women who, whether they opted to or not, but they were the lower earners, say, I'm generalizing, obviously. So they stayed at home with the children, which is, as we all know, unpaid work. Then they got up, they dropped off their careers, and then they sort of lost confidence, perhaps, and they're unable to go into the workplace because they've had 5 years out. They can't leave their marriages. They can't be the one making any decisions. Financial freedom is a woman's only freedom.
What would you, from where you are now, what would you say to 45-year-old Stacey sitting in the first rental, which you affectionately called the crack den, wondering what the fuck she'd done?
Well, I'd say to her, first of all, if she's on day one, give the keys back to the estate agent and tell him to go fuck off. Get the deposit back, go back to the marital home, have a word with your ex, sit and do a spreadsheet together and figure this out calmly and rationally. You're not on the run. If I couldn't say that and it wasn't day one and she was living there, I would say to her, you're going to have to go through a whole pile of shit, my friend. And at the end of it, you will survive because you have to survive, even though there were times when I thought I didn't want to carry on. And I am on antidepressants. I eventually went on them because actually I had to. I've got 2 kids. There was no choice. I had to live. So I went on the antidepressants and they provided a gentle buffer. And what I would love to say to her during this really, really rough patch, it was 2 years of hell, I'd say, you're going to go through so much shit. But at the end of it, honestly, this sounds like a cliche, but you will not recognize yourself because you'll be rebuilt, rescaffolded within. And that roof that you've never really had, I described myself in the last few pages as a house without a roof. You rebuild it with your own, in your own way, in your own time. Because you are, like you said at the beginning, you have to be at home within yourself. What is it you said? You can't.
I can't remember. I think I said something like you can't make your home in someone else.
That's right. I love that. You can't make your home in someone else. You have to make it within yourself. That's what I tell her. And I tell her, you're going to do it. With sheer grit and resilience, you will do it. And you'll be okay.
In fact, and this first question is actually probably going to be a bit tricky. What's your emotional age?
That's so good. Sam Baker. It oscillates between 12, 34 and 78.
That's probably pretty healthy. Why 78?
I just can see myself after doing my master's at St. Martin's and just, if I'm not dead, painting and being happy. The 12-year-old is rediscovering joy. And the 34-year-old was really when I felt this glimmer of like confidence at 34. I remember like, I'm no longer a kid. I'm a woman now. I remember that feeling, thinking, oh, I quite like this.
Give us a book recommendation.
Deborah Levy is just August Blue. I'm in the middle of. Oh, God. I mean, real estate, just, I read that last summer and it really changed things for me. The way I viewed myself and my role within sort of the wider culture, yes, but also within relationships. It's just a genius.
It's
real estate.
A good book. I kind of think, I don't know, everybody should get put through your door when you're 45 or something.
Yeah.
What advice would you give younger women?
Stop and think. Use if you could just take a pause and a beat before opening your mouth at work, in a relationship, to your children, to whomever, just take a breath. And taking a breath is something I've had to learn in later life because I was so eager to please. I would just think, if I don't answer this question immediately, they're going to think I'm stupid. If I don't get back to that person immediately, they'll think I'm rude, and so on and so forth. Take a breath, think, engage your brain, and I mean that kindly, and think about what it is you're about to do, whether that's walking the plank, aisle, whether it's a financial decision. Just take a breath. Your whole life doesn't have to be made in a 1 second decision.
Who's your old bird role model?
I just love Jane Fonda. She makes me howl. I love how kind of unapologetic she is about, her surgeries, and she's kind of refreshing for that generation.
What's your superpower?
Apart from talking to spirits and talking to dead people. My superpower is my creativity.
I love that you've rediscovered that. Not that you ever lost it, but that you've...
No, I did lose it.
Rediscovered your 17-year-old art college. When do you start?
October. And I'm not the oldest on the course. There is someone in their late 60s and someone in their 70s.
It'd be brilliant.
How cool is that?
It's brilliant. Last one. How many fucks do you give?
That's a really hard question this week because I really gave a fuck this week about so many things, about feeling so vulnerable. And then I just go back to giving 0 fucks because I have to. Otherwise, you wouldn't get out of bed. I give a lot of fucks and then I give 0, all in the same 30 seconds, all day long.
Thank you, Stace. Thank you for being so you.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, you might like my conversations with Rosie Green and Natalie Lee. You'll find a link to them in the show notes. You can hear a new episode of The Shift each Tuesday, wherever you get your podcasts. If you like what you hear, please do rate, review and follow, because it really does help other people find us. If you'd like more of The Shift in your life, head over to theshiftwithsambaker.substack.com and sign up for weekly newsletters, podcast extras and more.